Truth is hard to bear. Yes, Jesus, the truth does set us free. But we also know from experience that first that truth is going to pee us off. The truth of the cross brings us face to face with a very humiliating truth about ourselves. We are, all of us, sinners under righteous curse of God's law, and are unable to redeem ourselves. At the end of days, all our empty posturings, all our illusions of control, all our choreographed stories, and all the things we cling to, our strength, our beauty, our youth, the things and the people that we cherish and cling to, all will turn to ash slipping through our fingers. Yet there is so much shouting, outrage, demanding to be heard, this group against that group, and every group shouting their own truth. Yet there is an aversion to any narrative contradicting what I know to be true. For 2 years the teenage Jewish girl Anne Frank hid in terror from the Gestapo in an attic with 7 members of her family. Anne kept a diary, which her father found after the war ended. I think her reflections are that of many young people today. In one remarkable passage she writes, "It's twice as hard for us young people to hold our ground. In a time when all ideals are being shattered and destroyed, when people are showing their worst side, and do not know whether to believe in truth and right and God. It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals, because they seem so absurd, so impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them, because, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are good at heart. I see the world being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. What an amazing expression of faith and hope at a time of such upheaval and betrayal. Anne never saw peace and tranquility return. One day that dreaded knock came to the door. She and her family were taken to Belsen concentration camp, where they were murdered. What is it that helps a person to endure? The truth of justness of one's cause can give one great strength, just as David faced Goliath. The presence, example, and support of others can also be a great help. And then there is the best help of all, faith. Faith gives one that conviction, that hope, that goodness will triumph in the end. To live without hope is to cease to live. Hell is hopelessness. It is no accident that above the entrance to Dante's hell the inscription reads, "Leave behind all hope, you who enter here." In a world of so much social and political turmoil, people of faith will often be regarded as naive, ineffective, or irrelevant. However, we must not be afraid of such skepticism, such cynicism, but trust that God will give us the strength to hold our ground. Looking at our own death, our own personal last days, helps us to see how we should be living our lives right now, to decide on what are the things that are of true value, so that we may preserve in the strength of truth, love, compassion, and forgiveness. The Church puts before us today the last days so that we may gauge our own canon, our own law, our own way of living, may evaluate what is right and wrong in our present way of life. It can be equally frightening and humiliating to recognize and acknowledge our own paranoia and the nightmares of our illusions. We must see ourselves as we are reflected from the face of the cross, so that the Spirit of God may lead us to see truth correctly and to redirect our lives accordingly. Truth is that relationship with God that resonates within us. Our readings also warn us against false prophets within our own communities, even our own church, prophets of doom, people who speak of an angry and vindictive God who destroys his own creation, destroys his own children with wrath and molten fire heated in the heart of the sun. I think this often comes about through transforming our own vindictiveness and anger into God, seeing God as the path to vengeance and revenge. How do we protect ourselves from false prophets? Hans Urs von Balthasar spoke of the truth being symphonic. This is the way of listening to God's word also. When you have listened all the way through, learnt it, appreciated and enjoyed it, when you have come to love and to live according to it, then when someone strikes a false note, you recognize it immediately. Hey, that doesn't sound right. One of the musicians has made an error. They've played a false note. Where the note is harsh and strident, where it lacks beauty, goodness, compassion, and love, this is how we come to know truth from falseness, even within ourselves. To hear the truth, however, we must first become silent, letting the strident sounds of our ongoing judgment and that unending commentary on all that comes before us, the promise of the end of injustice, oppression, a healing that will come about through truth, love, compassion, and forgiveness, that leads us to reconciliation and leads us to peace. May our lives so resonate that goodness of God, who looks on creation with the tenderness of a creator, the joy of a gardener, and the maternal heart of mercy. The Lord grant you peace.